Hello, welcome inside the Hera press box. We are well into the 20s of episodes, right? Did you get a number for what this is?
20.
This
It
is
is
20
the
here.
20. Yeah.
Okay. So it slowed down a bit after I guess we were on episode 8 and we were actually on episode 16. So we slowed down a bit. But we are here, another Thursday night edition of the Hera press box. The NWSL action is back. WNBA's playoff picture is taking shape, as is the Pro Fast Pitch League. So we have a couple of topics that I think hit on all of those sports tonight, actually. That is, if we get to them, because I have one that I've been teasing to Alyssa, let alone our audience of 4 viewers, about what we will be talking about tonight.
That was a generous number of viewers right there.
4? Well, that's up from my typical number of 2. And I also haven't been editing these videos, so I think the numbers have been lower too, right?
Yeah, way to go.
Yeah, that's my fault. So anyway, jumping into that question, might as well, I guess. Last week, I took a position as a high school softball coach in the area. So I told a couple of the Badgers, female Badger athletes that I knew from my time at Wisconsin. And after explaining the situation and why it makes sense and why it makes sense for me, and it's not completely crazy for me to do, well, before I was able to explain that, they were kind of questioning that decision, or I could tell there was a sense of, isn't that going to be awkward? Isn't it going to be weird for you to do that? So that's kind of what I want to talk about. As far as where are we at with me as a male being this huge advocate for female sports, and there's barriers to that, right?
Right.
There's would you say public stigma against it?
Yeah, I would say in a way. But I mean, the majority of coaches across male and female sports are going to be male.
Right.
So in a way, yes, there's a stigma in the sense of that if it's a female team, it should be a female coach, which, I mean, I don't know. That's a good question. I think there is, but I think, and I don't know how close you are with these people, but that surprised me a little bit that the reaction was, isn't that going to be weird?
Right.
Just because I know where you're coming from and I know your viewpoints. So that's a little bit weird that they said that in my mind.
Yeah, so I made sure to save this, my response to so after we were talking and it kind of turned into a joking as in, no, this isn't, this is you. She was kind of saying, she said, do what you want to do, right? And and then I said, no, but seriously, tell me why you think this is a bad idea or whatever. And I said, I have 2 guesses as to why you think that. And she said, okay, well, what are your guesses? And I said, quote, 1, because I'm a younger guy, so it'll be awkward, but maybe for like the first meeting. But I'm hands down the biggest advocate for girls sports and supporting female athletes. So I think, and others think, this will be awesome for these girls to have a male figure be their biggest fan, fully supportive, and wanting to see them succeed athletically, unlike a lot of high school coaches that don't see it like that. Or 2, because you might be like a lot of other female athletes that just think it's weird that I'm so into girl sports as much as I am. So that makes this weird. And even though number 1 kind of solved that, but to add, it's crazy how much I want to see all of you, talking about the female Badgers, all of you succeed because you're doing stuff that nobody appreciates, because it's genuine. And it's like I told him, it's like they're all my sisters at Wisconsin, and I enjoy caring as much as I do about them because they're not appreciated, because they're doing this that nobody, it doesn't seem like anybody cares about, especially at our age.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we had talked about even a little while back in one of the episodes, and if it wasn't in an episode, it was before or after, talking about the Canadian women's soccer coach looking to step away after some point so a female can fill in, whether that's just because he fully believes that a female should be coaching a female team, or if that's just him raising the level, raising the bar, however you kind of really want to phrase that. I mean, to kind of point out one of your points, your second option of it's crazy or it's weird that a male has so much interest in female sports. That was definitely a thought that was like, wow, he like actually follows all of this stuff. Like he actually really cares. That's weird, but it's more awesome than it is weird. So it's better, I think, in the sense of that you actually care and you actually know what you're talking about. You know players, you follow players, and you have a genuine interest. And so I don't think that in your case there's any sort of stigma or should be any sort of complication with you being the coach.
Right. And yeah, and that's the initial thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of a female athlete, or even probably a female who doesn't play sports but sees who sees a guy go to every single game and is paying attention or tweeting about that team. I think that's the initial response. I'd be shocked to see somebody that seeing that first handful of tweets and say, okay, there's another guy that truly there's another under 30-year-old guy, because you talked about the coaches, and I mean it's I think the Canadian soccer coach is fairly young, but fairly young is 32 to 35 range, right, for a male coach in female sports. So that's a different aspect as well.
And I think people looking from the inside out in the sense of, well, you're male, so you shouldn't care, is kind of the wrong way to look about it. I mean, I said before that we need the male support. I think we need it in the sense of, LeBron James has come out and said that he's going to be watching the WNBA. Draymond Green was talking about how he's learned from the WNBA. And I think that support is helpful. Clearly it is, because you're seeing it on a whole different level. And I think any sort of support that we can get that's truly genuine, which is what you bring to the table, which is what I appreciate so much, because you don't see that a lot from males across the board, no matter what age. So it's that made me chuckle. That was kind of the initial response to that.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, and just comparing it to my response, I guess my response was, what is this going to be taking place of your full-time job?
Yeah, right. No, I'm just making slightly less as a high school head coach. Don't worry. Slightly.
Right.
So this is trying to dive into why males don't buy into female athletics. And I think it comes down to, I mean, you're comparing basketball players to basketball players, WNBA to NBA. So you would think it's the same sort of comparison, but it's not. It's really apples to oranges, as far as you watch an NBA game and you're watching it for the dunks. You're watching it for the fast breaks. You're watching it for the guy to hit 10 threes and set a record for whatever, right? And whereas you turn on the WNBA game, like the game that went into overtime tonight, Phoenix and Dallas, where, yeah, they scored over 100 points, but you didn't see players flying through the air. And that sort of excitement, you don't get that from. But if you're focused on the fundamentals and you really want to watch a team beat another team as opposed to athletically outperforming them, then I think that's where the WNBA comes in. And I don't think enough males realize that or admit to realizing it.
Right.
Don't want to, right?
Right. And I think you're spot on with that. I think basketball has shifted, especially in the NBA, in the sense of it used to be you had some really athletic guys, who could jump out of the building, who could pass like none other. And then it shifted to where athleticism is more valued than skills. And so in a way, it's become more exciting because these guys all over the place are jumping out of the building. And at the most fundamental base, that's the WNBA, is fundamentals. And that, it's weird because that's what was so exciting back when you look at, the Boston Celtics and the Lakers series. It was all fundamentals back in the day, with Kareem with the hook shot from the free throw line and Magic Johnson just passing it like with eyes in the back of his head type of thing. And the game has evolved, and the WNBA has taken on that fundamental aspect, and people, like you said, it's apples to oranges, and people just have to compare it to something. NBA was kind of the first go around. It was the first kind of essentially league of basketball, so it really didn't have to be compared to anything. You didn't expect anything kind of type of deal. And then the WNBA comes along, and it's just an automatic thing. And it's just an automatic thing in our world to start comparing it, because it's the same sport, so why can't we compare it type of deal. But it's two different games in, I think, at a fundamental level, the WNBA is way more exciting than the NBA.
Right. If you're if you are a true basketball fan, you should prefer the WNBA over NBA every night.
Right.
Every minute. Yep.
Yep.
I don't think you have to look any farther as far as proving our argument, our statements here. You don't look any farther than the thought of lowering the rim in the WNBA, right? I mean, that epitomizes what I don't even know what word I want to use, but it's a very idiotic statement and belief, I guess.
Yeah, right? I'm with you there. I love Gino, and I think you know that, and I think you love Gino.
Yep.
He said that on multiple occasions, and I've kind of turned my head at that, and just, it's another one of those things for it to just be, well, they had to lower their rim. Well, they play with a smaller ball. It's just kind of on that list of things that people always bring up. So it would just add on to it. And I just don't think at this point, with the game being as far as long as it is, it just doesn't make logical sense to do that. If maybe it started out at like 9.5 feet for women, then maybe so. And you're seeing more and more athletic females coming through the game anyways, who have fundamental skills and then can also add in their athleticism. So to say that there's female athletes in the WNBA aren't as athletic just because they can't jump out of the building like a Westbrook can is not a fair assumption or comparison, however you really want to call that.
Right. Yesterday we were talking about, well, you had asked me who you should follow on Instagram, and you're probably not following her yet, but tying this into this topic here, the caption is 5'11" guard just coming off a hip labrum tear and still right there. Comeback kid in full effect. And the video is of 5'11" Aerial Powers just barely missing the guy lobs the ball up to her and she goes up for a dunk and grabs the rim and the ball hits the back of the rim and flies out. But so
right, there's
5'11" Aerial Powers.
Right, there's no shortage of athleticism. It's just a different type of athleticism.
Right.
And it's more or less being able to appreciate that and recognizing that they have skill, that they have athleticism. So it's just on an individual basis to say, hey, they're actually really good at what they do. They actually, at a fundamental basis, are probably better than most in the NBA. And for a male to say that is, quote unquote not cool, you know, essentially to say a female athlete is better at the game of basketball than a male.
Right.
So I think that's where a lot of people, or some of the responses from people who don't necessarily know you in the sense of you getting this job and just kind of like, it's not cool to do that. Or from the male side, I'm saying.
Yeah. No, because, and then, yeah, to one, finish up this, what I was talking with this Badger about, you know, I at the end, it was kind of like, you know, she realized, right. And I told her, I said, if only I could tell literally every female Badger why this makes sense and, you know, explain that, then I would seem sane. Because right now it's almost like, you know, the kid's not sane for caring that much. But yeah, so we'll act like a real podcast here real quick. I mentioned Ariel Powers Instagram. Ariel_Powers23 is her Instagram if you want to give her a follow. AERIAL. You write that down? Okay. Yes. So you're following her. You have an Instagram. What's yours?
Well, that's a good question. What is mine?
Mine is same thing as it is for Twitter. It's not clam cakes like I've heard before, but it is at CLAMCKBES, Clam McBess.
Mine's a little bit different than my Twitter. It's alimmer11.
alimmer11. Okay, so if you want to follow us, I know for me here coming up starting next Friday, I'll probably be posting a photo from every college soccer game that I attend. That starts next Friday as the Indiana State Sycamores host the Flames of Illinois Chicago at the first ever night game for the Indiana State soccer program. To jump back into that discussion and finish that, if you will.
Yeah.
Is that, I'll stick with the word stigma. I think it is a stigma. Is that stigma holding back women's athletics from taking the next step, I guess, from appearing on FS1 sports shows more or ESPN highlights? Is that
in the stigma, the sense of how the game is played?
In the stigma of it's the
female sport dominated by male coaches?
So the majority of people who watch these shows are male. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
And probably the majority of anchors are males, correct? As far as
yeah, I would say
ESPN, yeah. So it's a male-driven media outlet.
Oh yeah.
Right. So is that stigma as far as you're not cool or you're not sane if you care enough about women's sports? Is that holding them back from being promoted in the media?
As far as from like an anchor position?
From me turning on just randomly throughout the day and seeing, NWSL highlights.
Well, you don't even get to see NWSL highlights, let alone their scores running at the bottom of the ticker on ESPN.
Right.
So clearly that the stigma is still there. The stigma is in general holding back women's sports. As far as media goes, I think media, as we've seen over the years, is such a big player in pretty much every aspect of life, let alone athletics. And that's true and I'm going to compare the WNBA and the NBA, and I don't want to do this because it's different. But if you look at the coverage of the NBA finals and the WNBA finals was one of the best final series probably in the game so far. And what did they get? 5 minutes maximum. And they had a story, right? Everyone's looking for a story.
Yep.
Candace Parker winning another one, or maybe was it? I don't think it was her first one. After, a handful of years, I think she won it her rookie year with Leslie. And, her and Nneka didn't make the Olympic team. Candace winning it after Summit passed away. They've got these storylines, which is what they're all for, right? I mean, you turn on ESPN and they're creating these storylines because that's what makes headlines. That's what makes people watch. and they're just sitting there for them, and they just let them go.
So let's say, so Kate Fagan, let's say Kate Fagan, Sarah Spain. ESPN has decided to get rid of their drone racing.
God.
They have decided to get rid of their E-League sports, which is a topic for another time, probably a later time than 10:30. So catch me on Friday or Saturday, and we'll talk about esports and drone racing. But ESPN has decided to get rid of those. Instead, they are going to run a 30-minute segment where Kate Fagan and Sarah Spain come on and talk strictly about women's sports. So in your mind right now, you have how that show goes, how many viewers watch, how popular it is. It is that ESPNW segment that we mentioned maybe in the first or second episode. It's finally being broadcasted. So you have those two talking. Numbers of viewers. You have those number of followers. How much of an impact is made when Sarah, and don't get me wrong, Sarah Spain and Kate Fagan probably knocked that show out of the park, right? That is probably a tremendous 30-minute segment.
Easily. Right.
And they probably cover they probably do what we do a million times better, covering all these different sports and getting the coverage out there and talking about those stories that you mentioned. But in regards to what we've been talking about so far tonight, tell me how that show is impacted by a guy like me being added to that show with a male presence and talking like I talk about female sports. Is it improved? How has it changed? Because I'm going to ask you next.
Yeah, go ahead.
The next thing I would ask is, let's say somebody a lot more famous than I am, well known in the sports world, becomes the male on that 3-person panel.
Yeah. I think for you, it would be maybe a little bit more beneficial for the show, but it's difficult because if you have you who, if people don't know you, are just like, this guy's on here, looks like he was forced on there, maybe he's with 2 females, he's talking about female sports, what is this guy doing?
Right. So and also
that's my assumption.
Don't lose your train of thought, because you talk about being forced on there, and it's funny you say that, because it's kind of what has been done to female anchors, right? I mean,
right.
You know, I as a person and as an advocate, Jessica Mendoza is awesome, but as far as sitting in the booth and talking with those guys, I mean, that personally, that hurts me watching the game. I don't think she's the best person to have in the booth, but it seems like she's kind of forced into that situation. They want her to talk just as much as the other guys do, whether or not she knows exactly what she wants to say or is comfortable saying it. It just seems kind of like a forced situation. So that's
and it would, and it's a way for ESPN to play off of the, we have a female color commentator, however you want to call her, in the booth with these guys in a male-dominated sport. So, and you kind of look at Doris Burke, who's kind of essentially the equivalent, but I think Doris Burke actually really enjoys her job and does an amazing job at what she does. But yeah, I think it was just kind of a way for ESPN essentially to be progressive about things, but maybe forced it a little bit. And who knows, she may actually really enjoy it. It just happens to be that it seems that way to us, where she's still kind of getting comfortable in that role, which for me, she's probably always going to be a little bit uncomfortable in my assumption, because of the sense of, in the back of her mind, I'm sure she's thinking, as with a lot of female reporters,
I have to talk like they want me to talk.
Right, in a male-dominated locker room, arena, field of, these guys probably aren't giving me any sort of credit whatsoever simply because I'm female.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the original question, your original answer, as far as how has it impacted? How does that change? Does it improve having a male on that panel?
Yeah, well, and you have to think about ESPN's target audience. So clearly, target audience is dominating male. So in a way, having someone like you on there and people understanding that you're actually genuine about everything that you say and you genuinely care about female sports, again, it goes back to, well, the males might say, well, that's not like cool. Like, what is this guy doing? You know, type of deal. What is he doing here? And I think then my reaction, if it were to be someone quote unquote famous on there, for instance, a male athlete, my reaction to that would kind of be like how the Badgers reacted to you, in the sense of, is this guy genuine? Like, does he go to more than one game a year? Does he watch more than one game a year? Does he know the bench players? Does he know the 6th, 7th, and 8th player coming off the bench well enough to be able to hold a conversation for longer than 2 minutes? So for me, just because I don't know them and what they do, I would question it. And I don't think that their target audience, let's just say ESPN's target audience, so males, would stick around to watch it either way, if it were to be someone like you or if it were to be someone famous. Mm-hmm. Maybe, depending on who the person is, they may stop and watch for a little bit. Just to hear what they have to say.
We'd have to throw up the swimsuit edition cover as the background, right?
That's, I don't want to talk about that.
Anyway, yeah, one of the questions. Well, so I interviewed with 3 principals, and one of the principals, this is real interview process, and he said, "Yeah, we had a coach down where I used to be, and he started coaching the softball team, and he'd been a baseball guy, played baseball, coached baseball, and he thought he'd come in and coach softball, and it was completely different. And we told him, you know, maybe you should go watch some games. And this principal said, yeah, once he started watching games, you know, he started picking up on things. So maybe, I guess, and since you're from a baseball background, maybe if you went to some softball games and try to get out there to watch the games, maybe that would help the situation." So very, very collectively, I said, yeah, no, you're right. A lot of people don't realize how different of a sport it is, right? With all the different rule changes, and they don't appreciate it. And I said, yeah. And me, you know, being up at Wisconsin, I went to 20 softball games a year. So there's 80 games that I went to, plus another 10 that I've been to. So I completely agree. Yeah. Going to those games, I really understand the game. So I think sold after that.
Yeah. He was like, oh,
yeah.
Oh, maybe. Okay, interview's done. You got the job. We'll just move on from that part.
Yeah, right.
And it's interesting, and just kind of maybe wrapping this up full circle. I don't know how much you want to talk about this, but my freshman year in high school, I had a female and a male coach for basketball. And I never once thought that my male coach didn't care as much as my female coach. I never once put that in doubt. I never once questioned his ability to coach us in any sort of fashion. He was my coach, so I respected that he was coming here coaching us and that he was putting forth his full effort in coaching us and genuinely cared for us. So it still just makes me chuckle that you had gotten that reaction from them.
Yeah. No, and that kind of goes along with I'd put in there about the other people supporting this decision to be this sort of role model, and that was and this was brought up because I have this other job, because I have other commitments. So one of the things is I had to talk to my colleague in my actual full-time job, and you know, and we were kind of talking through things, and it's kind of like, well, do you think this is going to be all right with everybody that's involved with us? And we were talking through it, and she said, yeah. And, you know, these high school girls, it would be nice to have a stable male leader
Right.
in their life to be that role model for them. And then I called my dad an hour before I accepted the position, and I said, "Do you think this is a dumb idea for me to do this?" And he said no. He said and just like you always talk about, the girls sports don't get appreciated enough, and for you to be able to step in and show these girls that they actually they do matter, and that it's cool for them to do this, and that it's going to work out, or whatever it's for me to do it. So that was easy decision, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's great for you and for them, because I think at the end of the day, you're going to end up learning a lot more than you thought you probably ever could from them. And you're hoping to do the same for them, and it shows them that not every single male is against them, that they do have at least some on their side. They have themselves, but even with, if they've got a family member or maybe a close male friend that is against them, they have you to point to and be like, hey, he actually cares what I'm doing. Again, and like you said, matters. It's important. We're doing something cool here. So I'm glad you took it. I didn't think that it was ever going to be in question. First off, your ability to be able to coach them, and second off, your passion to coach them. So it's interesting for me to hear all of this.
Yeah, no, and it'll be, I'm sure I'll keep, so it doesn't start till spring, obviously, but I'll do my best to keep everything updated on here, and I'm sure I'll take a few minutes to talk about that.
Well, we expect that.
Yeah, so have that going. Yeah, and heck, I've always wanted, eventually, I'll be a big fan of, I'll be really happy when I have a daughter. Well, why not have 20 of them right now, right?
Exactly.
That's one of the things I kind of look at it as. So that's pretty cool. I'm excited for it. But we're already at 32 minutes, and we did start a little late, and I guess I kind of hoped that this would turn into a full episode, and I guess it did. And I think we said everything that needed to be said. I will not be available Sunday evening. I am going to see Bruno Mars in Indianapolis. So that's a no-go. And then next Thursday,
I am most likely not going to be able to go, but I could. I'm trying to weasel my way so that I can be back here.
Okay, but don't get my hopes up about having my own show for a week. So
well, hopefully you'll know by tomorrow. Yeah.
By tomorrow? Okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Quick update for you. I don't know if you saw, but the was it 94 rivalry, right? 94 Madison Milwaukee Interstate.
Sure.
You don't get out much, do you? Anyway, no. Wisconsin beat Marquette 4-1 soccer tonight.
Oh.
And I'm not sure where Marquette was picked in the Big East, but it's a rivalry game. It's a good win to end the exhibition season. Wisconsin will begin their regular season next Friday, as does the rest of the collegiate soccer world. I hope you're ready.
I'm sorry. First off, did you say Wisconsin or Wisconsin?
I know how to pronounce my vowels, so I'm not going to repeat myself.
I was just asking. I just wanted to clarify. Make sure you were pronouncing it correctly.
I know how to pronounce my vowels. Thanks.
Okay. You're welcome.
I don't know how I said it, honestly. It's 10:45. We've been talking for 34 minutes, so I'm dashed out.
You're done?
I'm done. Yeah, but I think we are both done here inside the Hera Press Box, and we will see you, if not next Thursday, Sunday, sometime in the near future. Thanks.